There's a quiet hill in the Shaanxi province of China. There's no signage, no foot traffic, and just a small rise in the earth that locals don't think about much. But beneath it is one of the most closely guarded secrets in archaeology, a tomb that's never been opened. A structure built over 2,000 years ago by the man who founded an empire. His name was Qin Shi Huang. He unified China, named himself its first emperor, then commissioned a burial unlike anything the world has ever seen. One that was designed to last forever. And the truth is, we still have no idea what's down there. Today, we're heading deep into the mystery of Qin Shi Huang's underground kingdom, a tomb surrounded by countless treasures, but also by poison, booby traps, and a legacy of fear that's kept it sealed for over 2 millennia. I'm Mandolin. Welcome to Wild Curiosity. Hey, everybody. How are you? I hope you're all doing great and getting out into the outdoors, hopefully. I am about to leave for California tomorrow. So I realize I'm going to be gone for like a week and I need to put an episode out. So this one has been a long time coming. I'm really just diving into the history lately, it seems, but we're crossing the pond, so to speak, and heading to ancient China. So this story is really interesting. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the Terracotta Army, 8,000 soldiers made of clay in China. I have always kind of known about it since, it's like one of the big wonders of the world. But I didn't realize like what it was for or who these soldiers were meant to be protecting. So I was looking the other day for unfound crazy treasures because that is something that definitely sparks my curiosity. So this is one of the things on the list for one of the most undiscovered treasures left out there. So I just want to jump into the episode. Let's get into it, my friends. So, before we jump into this treasure, I wanted to start with a little bit of backstory. So, China is crazy, has the craziest history, very interesting. But let's take it back to the times before this emperor, Qin Shi Huang, which, by the way, is hard because Qin is spelled Qin. Shi is spelled Shi, and then Huang, which Huang. That part's easy. But forgive me if I get a little tongue tied, but I'm going to try my best to keep it legit with the pronunciations. So before Qin Shi Huang was emperor, actually China's first emperor, China was completely ununified and it was chaos. The land was fractured into 7 major kingdoms, each with its own rulers and with its own laws, currencies, and armies. These states fought constantly in what is now known as the Warring States period, which is just known as a brutal power struggle, and it lasted for over 250 years. So that's a lot of war. In the western state of Qin, there was a boy named Ying Jun, I believe. Ying Jun. So that was the emperor when he was a kid, and he was born in 259 BCE. And if you don't know what that means, it means a really fucking long time ago. So at just 13, he inherited the throne after his father's sudden death. RIP, dad. His early reign was defined by corruption, palace intrigue, and assassination attempts. But he survived them all. By the age of 38, he had conquered all 6 rival kingdoms. So he took down the other 6 kingdoms. And in 221 BCE, he actually gave himself a new name and named himself Qin Shi Huang, aka the very first emperor of China. I think he even named China actually, which is pretty cool. The crazy part about all of this is that Qin Shi Huang ruled only for 11 years as the emperor from age 38 to 49. But those 11 years changed the country forever. So, really, his reign was longer. I mean, he started as king of the Qin state when he was 13, but he didn't unite all of the states. Unite, I say, as he kind of conquered them, but till he was 38. And those 11 years changed the country forever. He standardized writing, units for weight and measuring. He created laws and currency, and he ordered a vast network of roads and canals to connect the entire empire. He launched the earliest construction of what would become the Great Wall of China by connecting and reinforcing the older regional walls, and it was brutal work. Thousands and thousands of people died building this. But for the emperor, it was about more than just the defense. It was about unifying what had never been whole before until him. Even before he did become emperor, when he was just 13, he, for some reason, I don't know if this was normal back then, but he began planning his tomb, and it was located at Mount Lai. Might be called Mount Lee, I'm not sure, which is a site that's super rich in minerals, and he conscripted over 700,000 workers to build it. He used artisans, laborers, enslaved people, and this tomb was not just a burial site. It was designed to be an entire underground empire and one that mirrored where he'd spent his life conquering above the ground. So, even after he died in 210 BCE, construction continued. So, this guy is like 13 and he's like, I want a badass burial site. So, get to work. That brings us to the very famed Terracotta Army. So in 1974, some local farmers in China around this area were digging and they were trying to dig a well. Strangely, they struck something and pottery shards appeared. And a little bit later, some bronze arrowheads. And then they realized that these pottery shards were actually body parts, like clay body parts. And they had uncovered just the edge of what would become one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the modern era, the Terracotta Army. This army is composed of over 8,000 life size clay soldiers that were found. Standing in perfect formation, each one had a unique facial structure and features, armor, and unique hairstyles. Entire battalions and infantry, officers, archers, and alongside them were 520 terracotta horses and traces of 130 wooden chariots, which those had long since decayed because they were wood. But it wasn't just art, it was a full army meant to guard the emperor in the afterlife. But these soldiers were not inside the tomb. They were in pits surrounding it. And so they number the pits. Each one has like a different amount of soldiers, maybe different rank or whatever. The emperor's actual burial chamber is still deep underground under Mount Lai and completely sealed. What's really crazy about these soldiers is if you've ever seen them, they are crazy detailed, especially for being over 2,000 years old. And like I said, there's 8,000 of them. They range between heights of 5'11 and 6'5". And I thought that was so interesting, especially because I just feel like back then people were shorter. And so these were like giants. And this obviously is a big chunk of what took the 700,000 people all that time to create. Pretty cool, I would say. I would love to go see the Terracotta Army. So, what I'm trying to say is that nobody has ever entered the burial chamber. So, there's the mausoleum's huge, this vast army of terracotta soldiers. Also, there was, I forgot to mention, a bunch of acrobats, which they were like these chubbier versions of the terracotta soldiers. And I had heard a historian say that compared to other paintings, sculptures, whatever, clay models of people at the time, people were very covered up, like their skin. These guys had no shirts on and kind of like skirts, I guess. And they were the acrobats. Each one did something different. Like there was a strong man, basically people to entertain the emperor. So, this is what is supposed to be inside of the burial chamber. The only written account of what's actually inside comes from China's very first historian, Sima Chuan, and he wrote this around 100 BCE. So, this was like 100 years after the emperor died, but he described a sprawling underground palace complete with palaces and scenic towers, rare and wonderful treasures, rivers of flowing mercury that map the empire, and crossbows rigged to fire automatically at intruders. So, at first, people assumed it was just a legend, but science has actually backed up parts of it. They've taken soil tests from around the burial mound and they show extremely high levels of mercury, hundreds of times the normal background rate. So, researchers believe the tomb may contain up to 100 tons, 100 tons, you guys, of liquid mercury used to simulate the great rivers of China. So, the mercury wasn't just symbolic, it was a known poison and may have served both as a preservative and a deterrent. And as for the other booby traps, there's no physical confirmation yet, but the warnings in the ancient texts are taken pretty seriously. So, mechanical crossbows rigged to fire if disturbed were not unheard of in tombs from this period. And then the most important part, the treasure. Historians believe the tomb could contain untold riches: gold, jade, ceremonial weapons, very rare scrolls, and possibly precious stones that are said to be embedded in the ceiling and the floor to represent the night sky and constellations. If it's anything like what that historian described, it could be the most valuable tomb in human history. But nobody's seen it, and nothing from the actual chamber has ever been excavated. But why? Why haven't we opened it in this day and age? There's 3 major reasons, and they're not just scientific, they're practical and they're ethical, I would say. So, number 1 is preservation. Including air and moisture to a sealed tomb could destroy its contents within hours, especially things that are painted, textiles, lacquered wood. All of this could disintegrate before it could even be documented. And the damage that was seen in King Tut's tomb in Egypt is a good cautionary tale for this. And so, until there's a guaranteed way to preserve what's inside, archaeologists don't want to take the risk. The second reason it is still not opened is toxicity. So, the mercury levels around the tomb, like I told you, were dangerously high. Opening it might release toxic mercury vapor, which could be hazardous for researchers and all of the surrounding lush environment. And then the third reason is cultural and ethical responsibility. So the Chinese government has made it clear the tomb will remain sealed until non invasive technology allows it to be studied and preserved safely. It's not just an archaeological site, it's a grave. So for now, the emperor stays buried. Modern ground penetrating radar, or GPR, and soil analysis have added to this intrigue. Recent surveys have detected large underground chambers and unusually high levels of mercury vapor, supporting Sima Chuan's accounts of these legendary rivers. That historian, Sima Qian, also in his writings from around 100 BCE, had recorded that after the burial, it was feared that the knowledge of the treasures could leak out. And therefore, all the craftsmen and workers who knew the layout of the tomb were sealed inside, and none of them came out alive. So, this strongly suggests that mass burial of laborers or artisans, either alive or executed after completion, were killed and buried as a way to protect the tomb's secrets. Other interpretations of his account mention that some of the emperor's concubines who had no children were also buried. Whether it this was a ritual sacrifice, which also was common in earlier dynasties of the time, or strategic elimination to prevent palace intrigue. Human remains have been found in the surrounding pits, some with signs of trauma. Burial of attendants wasn't unique to Qin Shi Huang. In some other dynasties, it was common to sacrifice and bury slaves, soldiers, or wives with the royalty. Qin outlawed human sacrifice partway through his reign, though, but many scholars believe that the practice may have continued in secret, especially for the emperor's own tomb. So, yeah, it was kind of like the ultimate security system, I guess. So, the kind of irony of this whole thing was for Emperor Qin Shi Huang, he believed that he could figure out a way to become immortal and he wanted to rule China forever. And so he spent his life literally trying to escape death. He sent expeditions across the sea to find mythical islands of immortals. He drank mercury elixirs given to him by his alchemists, and he was convinced they would make him live forever. Instead, these are actually likely what poisoned him. He actually died suddenly while he was touring an empire, and his body had to be hidden in a cart of rotting fish to disguise the smell during his transport back to the capital. He didn't achieve the kind of immortality he wanted, but in a way, he kind of did. His dynasty collapsed within a few years of his death, but his legend and his tomb are still with us, sealed, untouched, and unsolved. In the end, we don't know for sure what's inside the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, and maybe we're not supposed to. It's one of the only uncovered famous tombs left in the world, and it's a place where science, history, and myth kind of still blur together. And for more than 2,000 years now, it's kept secrets buried beneath its quiet hill. So, yeah, I just wanted to leave you guys with a little history mystery. And sometimes it's fun to dream about what is beneath our feet. And I hope one day we do have more definitive answers of what lies with the first emperor of China. Thanks for listening to Wild Curiosity. And I hope you guys have a great week. I will see you in 2 weeks on Thursday. Until next time. Stay curious and explore the wild. And don't drink mercury, dude. Just don't do it. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a comment, give it a rating, or share it with someone who'd wander down this rabbit hole with you. It helps more than you know. So thank you. See you guys next time. Bye.